break on the back straightaway. Bubba 3 wide below the line. That's going to be a penalty, I'm afraid.
On paper, Bubba Wallace's defense sounded perfect. He entered the move in third place. He exited the move in third place. He was all over the brakes trying to give the spot back. Nobody was passed. Nobody was displaced. So how did the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing strip him of a second-place finish and drop him to 29th? Kevin Harvick answered that question in one sentence, and once you hear it, the entire 31-minute protest inside the hauler falls apart completely. To understand why Harvick's verdict carried so much weight, you first have to understand exactly what happened on the final lap at Atlanta, because the sequence of events is the foundation of both the penalty and the argument against it. The Quaker State 400 at Echo Park Speedway was already one of the strangest races of the 2026 season before the controversy even began. A rain and lightning delay of 3 hours and 9 minutes pushed the finish deep into the night, and the checkered flag did not fly until 1:45 in the morning. Ryan Blaney had dominated the entire event. He started from the pole position, won both stages, and led 171 laps in his Team Penske Ford. But a late crash involving Kyle Larson, Chase Briscoe, and Riley Herbst with 5 laps remaining forced the race into overtime, and that overtime restart set the stage for everything that followed. Carson Hocevar held the lead when the white flag waved. Bubba Wallace took that white flag running third in his number 23 Toyota for 23:11 Racing. Down into turn 1, Wallace shoved Ryan Blaney forward, and Blaney swung to the high side of Carson Hocevar. That was the moment Wallace saw his opening. A gap formed on the inside lane down the backstretch, and Wallace committed to it instantly, diving to the bottom of the racetrack to make it 3 wide for the win. In the process of making that move, his left side tires dropped below the double yellow line that separates the racing surface from the apron. He ran alongside Blaney and Hocevar through turns 3 and 4, then got on the brakes hard, ran out of room, and rejoined the racing surface in third place. Exactly where he had started the move. In the final yards, a drafting shove from Ty Gibbs pushed Wallace up to second at the finish line, while a push from Christopher Bell carried Ryan Blaney to the victory. Wallace crossed the stripe believing he had secured a runner-up finish. Instead, the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing Black flagged him for the move below the line and dropped him from second all the way down to 29th, the final car on the lead lap. The swing was worth 27 championship points. Wallace went straight to his team hauler, reviewed the data with crew chief Charles Denny and 2311 racing director of competition Dave Rogers, and then marched to the series hauler for a 31-minute meeting with officials. When he emerged, Cup Series managing director Brad Moran confirmed the decision could not be appealed. Wallace's reaction on the way out was short and blunt. "A penalty is a penalty," he said. But before that meeting, Wallace had laid out his case to the media, and it is worth hearing in full because on the surface it genuinely sounds convincing. It says advancing your position, which I did not do, Wallace said. I stayed third and I was all over the brakes to make sure I did not advance. As soon as I turned, I was like, I am going to wreck. I got on the brakes, kept it underneath me, and still ended up side by side. He went further, pointing to the telemetry data that every team has access to. You go back and look at the SMT, I'm on the brakes trying to keep it underneath me and not advance my position. And he explained why the move failed in the first place. That move should have propelled us to the lead, and it didn't because I knew it was wrong because my car did not like that move. His summary of the entire situation came down to one line. I stayed third from the entry to 3 all the way until 50 yards away, Ty Gibbs gave us a shot. In his television interview, he added, I got a shove from Ty Gibbs to go to second, so technically. No positions were gained in doing that. Entered third. Exited third. Braking the entire time. That was the case Wallace and 2311 Racing built. So why did it collapse? The answer starts with the exact wording of the rule book. Section 8.3.2 of the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing Rulebook states, if NASCAR determines that a vehicle goes beneath the double-painted lines to improve its position, it will be black flagged. Wallace and his team focused on the end of that sentence, the phrase about improving position. He did not improve his position at the finish, so in their reading, the rule should not apply. Denny Hamlin read the same sentence and found something completely different. This matters enormously because Hamlin is not a neutral observer. He is the co-owner of 2311 Racing. He is Wallace's boss. Every incentive he has points toward defending his driver, and yet on his Actions Detrimental podcast on Monday night, Hamlin explained why he knew the penalty was coming the instant he saw the replay. When I watched it, I was thinking that that's definitely going to be a penalty because I've been penalized for it before, so I know and understand the rule, and that it's not that you gain a position, but you can't put yourself into position to gain a position, Hamlin said. Then he zeroed in on the two letters in the middle of that rule that change everything. It's not literal in the sense of advancing your position, Hamlin explained. It's making a move to advance. There's a word in there that is very, very specific on the result doesn't matter. It's the intention. The word is to. The rule does not say a car that goes below the lines and improves its position will be black flagged. It says a car that goes below the lines to improve its position will be black flagged. The attempt is the violation. The outcome is irrelevant. Hamlin then gave the comparison that makes the whole rule click into place. You have to pretend that there's a wall there. That yellow line, that is a wall essentially, that is not concrete. And the minute that you step your foot out of bounds, it doesn't matter whether you gained an advantage or not, that's what they call. And then Hamlin added the detail that dismantled the second half of Wallace's argument, the claim that he never actually gained anything at any point. The camera angle showing Wallace rejoining the track in third place was not the definitive angle. While the finishing position showed at first that he didn't advance, if you look out of the middle of turns 3 and 4, Bubba was the furthest out in front, Hamlin said. So he technically gained the lead at some point of the move. And that sucks because he lost a lot. At the apex of the move before the heavy braking, Wallace was momentarily ahead of both Ryan Blaney and Carson Hocevar. For a fraction of a second on the final lap, he was leading the race. The braking that returned him to third happened after that moment, not before it. To be clear, Hamlin was sympathetic about why the move happened at all, and his explanation of the driver's view is genuinely important context. When I'm going on the backstretch at Atlanta, the difference between the apron and the actual racetrack, there's not much difference in banking. So looking at a straight line is like looking at a landing strip for an airplane, Hamlin said. He described Wallace's mindset in the moment. Bubba in his car, and he probably made it up in his mind, was that he was going 3 wide somewhere. Wherever the biggest hole is, that is where I am going. And he defended the decision to try. Man, going for a win, I think you have to go for it, Hamlin said, adding, it was the only percentage shot he had of winning is to get 3 wide and hopefully get a push, and he just barely crossed over there. The sanctioning body itself then confirmed every piece of Hamlin's reading. Mike Ford, Vice President of Racing Communications for the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, addressed the penalty in detail on the Hauler Talk podcast, and he eliminated the give-back argument first. Unfortunately for Bubba, attempting to give the position back does not matter in this rule, Ford said. Then he confirmed the moment Wallace was effectively leading. We determined that he did advance his position in a couple of areas. At a certain point, if you look at the replays, he's in first and it's the last lap. So if there is a caution, there was a point pretty close to that start-finish line where he would have been declared the winner. Ford also destroyed the idea that a pass has to be completed for the rule to apply. Fully completing a pass where your rear bumper is now in front of the front bumper of the other car, that doesn't matter at all. You just need to be 1/4 of an inch ahead of the next car, and that's improving your position, and it was pretty clear to us. His bottom line tied the whole ruling together if he did go below the line and eventually improved his position. He wouldn't have gotten to where he did without going below the lines. That's really what matters here in this case. Interestingly, Ford also made a point of praising how the team handled the protest. He relayed that Vice President of Competition Elton Sawyer said the 2311 Racing Group couldn't have been more respectful during the process, noting that given the size of the blow, they could have probably been guns blazing and really angry, but they handled it in a very professional manner. So the team owner agreed with the call. The sanctioning body explained the call. But it was Kevin Harvick who ended the debate entirely, and he did it with the authority of a man who won the Cup Series championship in 2014 and who has made that exact kind of desperate final lap move himself. On his podcast with broadcaster Will Buxton, Harvick was asked directly whether there was any argument to be made in Wallace's favor. His answer left no gray area at all. "This is a pretty easy rule to regulate," Harvick said, and then came the sentence that shut down every remaining argument. When you see him go from behind those cars to beside those cars, it's pretty hard to argue that you don't have an advantage in advancing your position. That is the whole case in a single sentence. Before the move, Wallace was behind Ryan Blaney and Carson Hocevar. After the move, he was beside them fighting for the win. The only thing that transported him from one of those positions to the other was the trip below the double yellow line. Harvick then spelled out the standard in full. You can't advance your position when you go below that double yellow line or put yourself in a better position than you were when you started to go across the yellow line. And his explanation for how Wallace ended up there was notably generous. I think Bubba just kind of lost his train of thought and focus on where he needed to be on the racetrack right there. Harvick was not accusing Wallace of cheating. He was describing a human mistake made in the chaos of a final lap at nearly 2 in the morning. The mistake being human does not make the penalty wrong. Both things are true at once. But then Harvick said something that opened a completely different debate, and it is the part of his verdict that should genuinely worry the sanctioning body going forward. "In all honesty, I don't know that we really need the double yellow line rule at Atlanta," Harvick said. "It doesn't change this scenario. But I think that when you look at the racing and the way that the racetrack banking and everything is, I don't think it's really like Daytona and Talladega in a certain sense. Down the front straightaway, it's really rough and you could kind of cut those sections, so I can see it both ways." Here is why that observation matters. The double yellow line rule has existed since 2001, and it exists for a specific safety reason. At Daytona International Speedway and Talladega Superspeedway, genuine superspeedways with flat aprons and speeds around 200 miles per hour, a car that drops onto the apron can become unsettled, lose control, and come back across the racing surface into traffic, triggering a catastrophic multi-car wreck. The rule keeps drivers on the banking where the grip lives. Atlanta is different. The track carries banking through the backstretch and the apron is rough and bumpy. The natural punishment for going below the line at Atlanta is that the car gets slower and unstable, not that the field is placed in mortal danger. The safety logic that justifies the rule at Daytona and Talladega simply does not transfer to Atlanta with the same force. Ford defended keeping it anyway. "I know some people don't love the rule, but I think it probably would be a lot worse without it," he said. "And that's why we've kept it on the books for 25 years. And this is far from the first controversy the rule has produced." Regan Smith was stripped of an apparent win at Talladega in 2008. Justin Haley lost an Xfinity Series victory at Daytona in 2018 when his tires dipped below the lines on the final pass. The 2020 playoff race at Talladega descended into chaos when Joey Logano was penalized twice, Matt DiBenedetto was penalized on the final lap, and Chase Elliott had his penalty rescinded after a protest, with Chris Buescher penalized instead. Christopher Bell was penalized at Atlanta in 2022 for passing Ross Chastain below the line on the last lap. 2 decades of judgment calls, protests, and reversals, all flowing from a rule that hinges on the phrase "if in NASCAR's judgment." For Bubba Wallace, the consequences are immediate and measurable. The penalty left him with just 9 points on a night when he led 11 laps and ran at the front for most of the evening, especially after the contact from Ty Gibbs at the end of Stage 2 had already cost him stage points. He sits 13th in the regular season standings, 55 points above the playoff cut line. Without the penalty, that cushion would be 82 points. He has now finished outside the top 20 in 6 of his last 9 races, and Wallace knows exactly what the drivers behind him are thinking. Everyone behind us in points is like, oh, 23, Wallace said. They see that and are licking their chops. With the position that we are in, we're not safe. So the verdict from the garage is about as unanimous as it gets. Denny Hamlin, the man who signs Wallace's checks, backed the call. Kevin Harvick, a champion who has lived that final lap desperation, backed the call and closed the argument in one sentence. The penalty was correct under the rule as written. The real question, the one Harvick himself put on the table, is whether that rule belongs at Atlanta at all, because if it stays, every driver on every final lap there will face the same split-second calculation Bubba Wallace faced at 2 in the morning, and some of them will not see the line in time either. Is Harvick right that Atlanta should drop the double yellow line rule, or does consistent enforcement across all 3 drafting tracks matter more than the specific context of one racetrack?